So Putin just threatened Europe with war before negotiating with Witkoff. It's really bizarre. It is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. So let's talk about what just happened today. I'll go through the sequence. As I'm recording, it's not yet 4:30 Eastern Standard, not yet 11:30 Moscow time. And in Moscow, they're still talking. Witkoff and the team is still talking at the Kremlin. Okay. So Zelensky said, I'm ready to receive all the signals and ready for a meeting with President Trump. Everything depends on today's talks in Moscow. So that's where Zelensky is. U.S.-backed peace plan for Ukraine has been revised from 28 points to 19 points, now to 20 points, following consultations in Geneva and Florida. President Zelensky confirmed during his Ireland visit, adding that some things still need to be worked out. Okay, so Zelensky had a detailed briefing by the Ukrainian delegation following their meetings in the United States. Rustem Umerov and participants in the negotiations in Florida reported on key points raised by the American side in the dialogue. Our diplomats are actively working with all partners, Zelensky said, to ensure that European countries and other participants in the coalition of the willing are meaningfully involved in the developing decisions. That's a very smart point on his, that's a very smart move on his part. Russians have already launched a new disinformation campaign in view of the preparations for their upcoming meeting with the American side. It's actually kind of slick what Putin has done. I begrudgingly am saying like he did a good job doing that from his perspective, even though I don't want him to do that. I'm talking about Putin. I gave instructions to continue the most constructive work possible with President Trump's team, as well as with our European partners. Ukraine approaches all diplomatic efforts with utmost seriousness. Now, on this point, they have to be serious, but Putin's going to scuttle it. I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. So Putin was giving a speech, and he said Russia is not going to fight European countries. But if Europe starts a war, Russia's ready to fight now. Of course, this is, projecting and being all big and bad and tough. Okay, so Putin said this in a meeting just before the meeting with Witkoff. He was giving a speech, and he said, all the changes in Europe tries to make to Trump's proposal are aimed to block the entire peace process, to put forward demands that are completely unacceptable to Russia. Of course, all your demands are completely unacceptable to Ukraine. So, okay. Unacceptable suggests basically that Ukraine's sovereignty is no more. So that's what we're talking about. But he also said this: we are not planning to go to war with Europe, but if Europe suddenly wants to go to war with us and starts one, we're ready right now. And then he goes on and he says, the only thing that is that if Europe suddenly wants to start a war with us and does so, a situation may quickly arise in which we will have no one to negotiate with. I think that's a veiled nuclear threat. I'm not exactly sure, though. So, again, the headline here today was that Putin warns Russia prepared for war with Europe right now. And this was just before the meeting with Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff. And Russia was also saying things like Russia will strike Ukrainian ports and vessels, entering them more often in response to the attacks on the tankers. Russia may cut Ukraine off from the sea, Putin said. Well, I mean, if they could have done that, they would have done that. But Jane Keefe commented, Russia's been striking Ukrainian ports and ships since day one of the war. So it's like, what's new here? Or what are you going to do differently? Okay, now, Witkoff and Jared Kushner, that's Trump's son-in-law, are at the Kremlin. They're accompanied by Kirill Dmitriev, and his jacket says Russia on it. Or Greg Terry and I were talking earlier, and he said it says something like Russia will win or Russia must prevail or some equivalent. Before the talks, Witkoff, Dmitriev, and Donald Trump's son-in-law took a walk through the central Moscow, like the square around it, and had lunch at Titralnaya Square. Titralnaya Square. And so they, had a time walking around, sightseeing a bit. And then Putin was asking about how you enjoyed the sightseeing and so on and so forth. Okay. U.S., China, and Russia meeting to decide the future of Europe. Stark warning to Brussels. Steve Witkoff, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang in the Kremlin waiting on Putin. And then Michael McFaul pointed out from the picture here, presidential aide Yuri Ushakov and Dmitriev are there with Putin on this side. And he points out, note that 3 out of the 5 people participating in this meeting are business people. U.S.-Russia business deal should not be on the agenda of a negotiation to end Putin's invasion of Ukraine. He's spot on. Putin only wants what will assure that he gets what he needs in order to get to the next stage. That's an invasion of NATO and Europe. And as you move forward, Ukraine is weakened. So this is what's reported from NBC News. According to, they added 3 points of Trump's peace plan that Russia will not make concessions. Okay, so first, the territory of Donbass. Okay. They want all of Donbass, and that's a no-go. That's a non-starter. That's why it's not going to go anywhere. Second, limitations on the size of Ukraine's armed forces. They still want that. And then third, recognition of new regions of Russia by the United States and Europe as Russian territories. Like, if you were going to come up with anything more provocative, I'm not sure exactly what it would be. Okay, so now, after this meeting, which hasn't concluded yet, but after this meeting, U.S. envoys Witkoff and Kushner are expected to fly from Moscow directly to see Zelensky in Europe. Axios reports Ukraine's next steps may change hourly depending on signals from Moscow. So we don't know what that'll be, but I'll bring it to you. Sources in Britain say that remember Bloomberg dropped this release of Steve Witkoff's call? Sources in Britain say that they may drop further parts of that call to further weaken Trump's already shaky chances of a quick peace for Ukraine. So who knows what's left on the call between Witkoff and Ushakov or Dmitriev. Okay, so Rubio managed to put, in other news now, Rubio managed to put Trump to sleep. Trump seemed to be resting his eyes at best here while Rubio was talking. Trump is no longer funding the war in Ukraine, he says. Listen to this.
Problem with a war that our people are trying to settle now with Russia and Ukraine. We are not involved in the war monetarily anymore. Biden gave away $350 billion like it was.
That figure is not correct, but the headline here is Trump is saying we're no longer funding the war. And then we see this, United States halted all deliveries of certain types of weapons to Ukraine, according to The Atlantic, which has just reported that the reasons of the timeline for resuming shipments have not been disclosed. If shipments resume, we just don't know yet. Okay. Michael McFaul says this is insane. Russia needs to pay reparations, but that's not the way this seems to be going. So here's a scoop from Politico. When EU sanctions envoy David O'Sullivan traveled to Washington during the summer, U.S. officials told him in no uncertain terms that their plan was to return the assets to Russia after the signing of any peace plan, according to 2 senior diplomats who spoke to Playbook and Gregorio. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what to say here. You have to have reparations for what Russia has done to Ukraine, or Europe has to pick up the bill, or, I mean, it's not, if Russia doesn't pick up the bill, who's going to, reconstitute Ukraine? All right, Gary Kasparov is saying, recall ambassadors, low down diplomatic ties, but Europe is doing business as usual. More than 500,000 visas were issued for Russians last year in Europe. Putin's laughing at you. Do you want to be serious? Send French military jets to Ukraine. Show you're willing to take a hit. Yeah, I mean, as long as they're still doing business as usual, why would Putin want to move? All right, this morning I reported on the 4th tanker in 4 days that was hit off Turkey's coast. This is a Shadow Fleet tanker. One was off Africa. The others were around Turkey or in the Black Sea. Ukraine's foreign ministry denied any role in the reported attack on this Russian tanker. So that's different. The spokesperson said that the incident may have been staged by Russia. I mean, I was just reporting what news we had this morning, but this is an update. Russia's lie. Ukraine, quote, Ukraine hit the Russian tanker made Volga 2, which was heading from Russia to Georgia with a cargo of sunflower oil. This is what Russia media writes about. The reality is that Ukraine has nothing to do with this incident, stressed a spokesperson from Ukraine's foreign ministry. We officially refute any such accusations made by Russian propaganda. So, okay, I mean, the other 3 tankers were all hit. They're like for loading oil, like oil for gasoline, that kind of oil. And they were hit by seaborne drones. So this is different, and maybe it is a setup. I just don't know. And we won't find out anytime soon. Last big story, Trump has given Maduro until last Friday to leave Venezuela with his family, according to 2 sources cited by the agency. The expiration of this safe corridor deadline is what prompted Trump to announce the shutdown of Venezuela's airspace on Saturday, and it was promptly shut down. I showed you that. Trump says the U.S. will start striking ground targets as part of the fight against drug cartels in Latin America. If you're watching like the tracking sites, 6 of a particular type of U.S. Navy, I think it was U.S. Navy aircraft, just left Florida heading down toward South America. It's unusual for this volume of this particular type of military aircraft to be heading that way. Something could kick off anytime. US-Venezuela conflict update. Maduro is currently dancing on stage at a public rally. I just don't understand why any politicians ever dance. Like, they just should stay away from that. I mean, it's just a bad scene, generally speaking. It's better than some politicians, but okay. That's after he was giving a speech for over an hour, trying to, inspire some confidence in his people about how they're going to stay and they're going to fight. But I mean, that doesn't look like it's going to work out so well for him. Last little bit, Hugo Chavez's brother is now demonstrating how he will defeat the President Trump and the Yankees when they come. What you're watching here is Gicho Hyung Ilbu, basic form number 1. It's also called Pumse in Taekwondo. I happen to have a black belt in Taekwondo, and he's doing it wrong by a little bit, but especially when he gets to the end, the strike is a little bit too high in there, and I don't know what he's going to start doing with this thing, because that's not part of the actual form, but I guess he's thinking that it's somehow intimidating. So, yeah, that's Hugo Chavez's brother. So, all right, I've seen stranger things, but that's where we are today. Thank you, my friends, for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. Shout out to Peter Fusi, a graduate student, YouTube member. Thank you for your support, and thank you, all of you, for being the kind of people that care about Ukraine.